Season 1, baby. This is it. The language of abuse. Welcome. This is the series where I'm going to hope to create some clarity around some of the most commonly used and misused phrases in the modern mental health space. And for you guys who don't know me yet, my name is Lawrence James, and I'm absolutely no stranger to toxic relationships. About 10 years ago, I ended up marrying a young woman who was raised in a cult. I then spent 3 years in a toxic relationship and then the next 7 studying and recovering from narcissistic abuse. Now, in that time, I was reading a lot of stuff from folks like Dr. Stephen Hassan, the cult expert, and I found Richard Grannon's channel and folks like Pete Walker to be very, very helpful as well. And so I've taken a lot of that learning and condensed it down and created this YouTube channel to help you guys pretty much do the same thing. So in this introduction video, I'm going to go through who should actually watch this and whether it's actually going to be worth your time going through this series. I'm going to have a quick chat about why I actually put this course together and the importance of words in trying to understand what has happened to you in a toxic relationship, and of course what to expect later on in the series as well. So with that, I want to welcome you all to the series. You can grab a seat, get yourself a cup of tea, and we'll jump straight in. Alright, so let's start with why you should actually watch this content in the first place. I think there are 3 types of people that would really benefit from watching this series. The first are people I call the romantics. So if you, like me, were in a romantic relationship with somebody that eventually had you Googling narcissism at 1 o'clock in the morning or consuming what is gaslighting content on TikTok, then you might be the romantic. The second are people I call worker bees. So if you get into a employment position and your boss is somebody that has you feeling like you're walking on eggshells every time you go into the office, and you're losing your evenings and your weekends and your relationships are being put under strain because you suspect that your boss could be a narcissist or a psychopath, then you're going to want to know what the words in this series mean. And the last is for those that I call the family fixers, people who grew up in a household of high tension because one of the parents in that household are suspected narcissists, suspected psychopaths, and again has you consuming a lot of this modern mental health content that you find on YouTube, on Instagram, on Pinterest, on TikTok, and things like that as well. The whole reason for putting this series together then is because when you go through a toxic relationship, be it with a partner, be it with a boss, or whether you were raised in that environment, you are in a constant state of fight or flight. You're not necessarily thinking about things straight. You are reacting and responding. You're constantly looking to calm them down, or you're trying to prevent them from freaking out. And when you come away from that and you try to make sense of your situation, it's very, very hard because a lot of the experience is frozen in what Jung calls the unconscious. You're not aware of it. You don't actually know how to label or describe what's happened to you. And so when you think about what Jung calls the ego, the conscious mind, your awareness, what you know is happening, what you're aware of is going on, this part of your brain looks for order. It looks to structure things, and it bases all of that on labels, on being able to describe something and put it into a linear story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Trauma, your relationship and everything that happened to you exists in the unconscious. And the unconscious mind thinks in symbols. It thinks in shapes. Okay? That's where unawareness lives. And unawareness is dark and it's formless. It doesn't have shape. It doesn't have a linearity. It doesn't have time. And so by starting to label things and create definitions and be able to go, oh, I went through this, that, and the other, and XYZ happened to me, and that is this. You can take all of that dark, formless experience and turn it into a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can create order and structure out of it. And it begins with awareness. It begins with by bringing that whole unaware, shaken, terrified, fearful, fractured experience that you had in your previous relationship and brings it into the forefront of your mind so you can start to make sense of it. This exact same concept is described in the book The Body Keeps Score, which I talk about a lot on my channel. And this was written by a guy called Bessel van der Kolk. He was explaining in the first part of his books how trauma and this goes to toxic relationships as well, quite literally steals your words. Whilst it's happening, the emotional part of your brain is in full overdrive. It's just looking to keep safe. Whilst the labeling part of your brain, the part that is a little bit more conscious, parts of your brain like Broca's area, they shut down. They stop operating properly. And so if you can't come up with the words, or you don't know the words, or you cannot put a label to define your experience, you don't experience it as this linear, step-by-step, beginning, middle, and end that you need to be able to understand what happened to you. Instead, you relive that experience as a series of flashbacks. You might find that you don't actually remember a lot of what happened to you, but you may have moments where you are overcome with fear or overcome with guilt or shame for something, and you're not necessarily too sure whether that's something that you should feel fearful of or guilty for or shameful for. And this is called a flashback. And this is how you will experience a traumatic event or a traumatic relationship from your past until you can start to translate that dark, unconscious, formless, fractured experience into a linear story. So there's a couple of problems with labeling things as well. And I think one of those key ones is self-limitation. So for example, you can label something as a disorder, and by doing that, you're then going to look at that behavior or a series of behaviors as a malfunctioning of the brain. Brain doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. Whereas you could take that same behavior or that series of behaviors and you could frame it as something else, like an underdevelopment. And then, if it's a disorder, then there's nothing you can do. Brain's broken, needn't even bother try to fix it. Or if it's an underdevelopment, then it's okay, it's not broken, it just needs improving. So you can try as you can fix. And this is why I love NLP as well. That might be familiar to some of you, but it's all about sort of reframing and changing how you look at something or how you see something using language. The other problem as well is around sort of overgeneralization or loading up a language to make it sound better or becoming an expert in all this fluffy therapy speak that you're not actually doing much of the healing. You're not doing much defining and actually understanding what's happened to you. Instead, you're just proliferating this word salad and just, throwing words out there, and it's just a lot of waffle, right? And you're saying words that don't really mean anything because you've overgeneralized everything. So we have to be really careful with our definitions. And so I'm going to try my absolute best in this series to clearly define some of these most commonly used words in the modern mental health space, rather than just create more noise and more confusion. So recovery really starts with labeling. This is the very beginning of the journey. That's why it's season 1. And also, I think you really have to just understand how the decision making in your previous relationship was taken from you, how your brain was put into fight or flight mode, and how the linguistic components of your brain were not necessarily active during that relationship, and how that's such a big problem. Because when you then go searching for answers and you try to fill in the gaps and translate that confusion into something that makes sense to you, you're going to be met with what I see even now when you go onto YouTube or you go onto TikTok or you go onto Instagram and you search for what is gaslighting, what is narcissism, and you're met with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who, some of them are fantastic resources and really have done their homework and experienced it themselves as well. Some of them are just repeating and repeating and repeating something that they've heard without necessarily doing the thinking. And this is going to be a real problem for you, because if you get the definition wrong, then you're going to misinterpret what's happened to you, and you're going to come up with a very, very different story than what actually happened. So we're going to be kicking off this series with one of the most important words when it comes to narcissistic abuse, and generally making somebody do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do. You need to know what is dependency. Love bombing is also a heavily used term, and it's not exactly what you think it is. Trauma bonding is at episode 4, and if your last relationship got really, really close, really, really quickly, you're going to want to know what trauma bonding is. Gaslighting is modern mental health's new favorite buzzword, so we're going to get into that. Triangulation, if there's a third wheel in your relationship, if you're always being compared to other people, you're going to want to know what triangulation is. If you're always feeling guilty in your relationship, then it's probably because of projection. A loaded statement might be the reason why you're always apologizing to them. So we'll take a look at that. We're going to look at the transactionality of toxic relationships as well in episode 9. What is a favor debt? Stonewalling, or the silent treatment, again, is not what you think it is. It's a heavily misused term, and we're going to get into that in episode 10. What is reactive abuse, better known as provocation? And finally, the most commonly misused and overused term in society in general, I think, at this point. What is narcissism? Okay, so if you're ready to get going, next video should be right here. Click the link and I will see you in a minute.